Hello, everybody. This is Dani Rabin. I'm the guitarist in Marbin, and this is episode 3 of Fusion Guitar Lesson. We're going to talk about the blues. More specifically, we're going to talk about the cadences in the blues. And more specifically than that, we're going to talk about the points of arrival. So the first thing I'd like you to do is think about the 12-bar blues. If you don't know it, this is not for you. You should get your shit together and study some chord progressions. But there are two types of main blues we're going to talk about. The 1-4-5, which is the most basic form of it would be the 1 chord for 4 measures, the 4 chord for 2, the 1 chord for 2, and then the turnaround would be 5-4-1-5. And then we're going to talk about the jazz blues. And again, in its simplest form. So it's going to be the 1 chord for 4 measures, the 4 chord for 2, the 1 chord for 2, and then the turnaround is going to be a 2-5-1, right? And the last measure will be 5-2. So that 12-bar blues, I'm actually, when I'm talking about the jazz blues, it's going to be the simplest version of it. Before I get into those chords more specifically and the point I'm trying to make here, which is how to enter these points of rest gracefully in this context, I want to just conceptually get on the same page and explain one simple concept. The 12-bar blues should be viewed as 3 lines of 4 measures each, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4 in your mind, then 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. That's important because the big points of arrival in the harmonic rhythm of the blues are measure 1, measure 5, and measure 9. So if you're just writing out this 12-bar form as 3 lines of music, 4 measures each, that first measure is going to be all your points of arrival. So what's the idea of playing a cadence to get to a point of arrival, right? That's really the question here. And you could use a tool like playing the 5 of something. That's the most basic harmonic tool that we can use to arrive at this point. So to arrive at a point of rest, you find the 5 of that chord and get there. That's a lot of talking. Let's get to some playing. So let's say I'm playing this whole thing in the key of F, right? So the 1 chord is F. That's going to happen for 4 measures. So let's say it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just a walk up. And then it's going to get to the 4 chord, B flat. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, back to F. So that B flat was measure 5. That measure 4 into measure 5 is an opportunity to get into the chord, to play some sort of cadence, to do something that leads me to that point. So the first thing to do in a blues is take a look at measure 1, 5, and 9, and then ask yourself, what's a graceful way, what's a led way, a voice-led way to get there? So the tool I'm going to use is going to be altered, right? Which is the 7th mode of melodic minor. And I'm going to play the 5 of the chord I'm going to. So the 5 chord that leads to a B flat 7, which is the 4 chord, is going to be an F altered. And that's going to be the first big cadence in my blues playing. So I'm just going to play inside on that 1 chord for 3 measures. Then I'll play F altered, meaning 1 altered, which is the scale G flat melodic minor. And then I'm going to resolve it to the 4 chord, which is going to be B flat mixolydian. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I use that measure 4 as a way of getting into that next big home kind of point, right? Now, where's the next time there's going to be this big moment? It's going to be measure 9. So in a 1-4-5 blues, measure 9 is the 5 chord, right? In a jazz blues, it's the 2 chord, because we have a 2-5-1 cadence at the end of a jazz blues and a 5-4-1-5 at a typical blues. that is different, right? So if you're playing a 1-4-5, you're going to have to use this kind of scale that leads you to the 5 chord. If you're playing a jazz blues, meaning a 2-5-1 at the end, you're going to have to play the kind of scale that leads you to that 2 minor chord. So the question is, are you going to a C7 or are you going to a G minor first on that measure? And that really determines what you're going to be playing on measure 8 of the blues. So let's talk about a 1-4-5, meaning we're going to get to that C7, the 5 chord in the key of F. But to get there, we're going to play G altered, right? So we're going to throw that 5 of 5 sound. What you see more typically is the tritone substitution of that, which is a dominant chord built on the flatted 6th degree of the scale, like a D flat 9, that leads you to the C. But you can see, however you think about that change doesn't really matter because they both come out of the same scale. G altered and D flat Lydian dominant are both just A flat melodic minor. So in terms of scalar thinking, it doesn't matter. But now check out the sound. I'm going to start on measure 5 of the blues, that 4 chord, the B flat 7, and I'm going to play 4 for 2 measures, 1 for 1 measure, and then I'm going to hop into that sound, the A flat melodic minor, to lead me to the 5 chord, right? So check this out. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I played the cadence that pulls me into that 5 chord. Now, the last moment where you have another point of arrival is when you get back to the 1 chord, measure 1. So measure 12 of the blues leading you to measure 1. So it's a C7 going to an F. On that C7, if I play C altered, D flat melodic minor, then I can voice lead back to 1. So if I play the last turnaround of a blues, 1, 2, 3, 4. See what I did there? So I played that D flat melodic minor, meaning C altered, to get me back to the 1 chord. Now, here's me just playing a 1-4-5, completely inside, except for those moments that lead me to the big moments in the blues. So measure 4 is going to lead into measure 5, right? And I'm going to play 1 altered going to 4-7. Then measure 8 is going to lead into measure 9. I'm going to play that 5 of 5 altered, right? G altered leading to C mixolydian. And then the last measure of the blues, measure 12, is on the C7. I'm going to play a C altered, which is D flat melodic minor, and that's going to lead me back to the 1. So here's the example: 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's pretty cool. That gives me those big points of arrival in the 1-4-5. Now let's change the progression to a jazz blues. The only thing I'm going to change, even though jazz blues is a little bit more, there are more things in it typically, but the big thing that's different is the last 4 measures. So instead of a 5, 4, 1, 5, in a jazz blues, I have a 2, G minor, to a 5, C, to a 1, and then a 5. Now, if I'm going to that 2 chord, I can't use the same thing because the same thing that I use on measure 8 led me to the 5 chord. So I got to use the 5 of 2, meaning D7. D7 is D altered, E flat melodic minor. Now check out what a difference that makes in the tone, in the sound of the thing. 1, 2, 3. So that's the different approaches. Now, if we go back to the first thing we talked about, which is mapping out the blues 4 measures at a time, and we just kind of focused on that column of 1 chord, or sorry, measure 1, measure 5, measure 9. Now let's shift our focus in the harmonic rhythm. We're going to, like if this is measure 1, 2, 3, 4 in our line, let's take a look at measure 3. Now, it's true that all the measure 1s in a column are the most important, but those measure 3s are other points of arrival that are a little bit less significant, but still important. Now, here's the thing. They all go back to 1 on that point of the blues. Think about it. No matter what kind of blues you're playing, right? Measure 1 is the 1 chord. Measure 2 could be like maybe the 4 chord, or, you know, a 2-5 back to 1. Measure 3 is 1. Then measure 4 leads you to that 4 chord. Really, in our conversation so far, we said that the column of that first column of the measure 1, measure 5, and measure 9 were a point of arrival, and then that fourth column were basically ways of getting there. So now we're talking about that column of measure 2 and measure 3. And the point I'm trying to say is that measure 2 leads you to that point of rest again, which is measure 3. And it's all just going back to 1 in different ways. There are many ways you can get there, but just altered to 1, meaning in that key, it's going to be like D flat melodic minor, a C altered, gets you there. So here's that sound of just you playing the blues that way, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. So on measure 2, measure 6, and measure, what is that, 10, I just played C altered. And then I just went F mixolydian on all of the next measure, like the inside of the blues, right? The measure 3, 7, and 11. So if you think about it that way, the middle 2 measures of the blues could always be the same in every line. It's a trippy thought to think of, but it's true, right? Because I just played C altered to F mixolydian at every point. Now you can say, oh, but wait a second, like measure 2 is supposed to be like the 4 chord. It's true, but if you don't think about it like the 4 chord and you just think about it as something that leads me to the next measure, it's always going to the 1 chord. So that's kind of, a way of updating your thinking. So let me just play a few choruses. I'm going to do 1, 4, 5, just to show those scales, into a jazz blues. And I'll just repeat it that way. And I'll play maybe, I don't know, 4 choruses. 1, 2, 3. Alrighty, please subscribe to this, leave comments if you have any questions, and I hope it helps you guys. See ya.